In my last video, I told you guys that I had more games with Striker coming up, and one difference between the last one is we've both moved up to Colonel, and this was maybe a couple weeks later. I'm testing out a new Blue Dragons deck that was informed by some expert players like Lord Pie, who also did give me some feedback as I think as this game was hitting maybe the 15-20 minute mark, and you'll see a lot of differences, I hope, in how the last one went and how this one went. As we get on the move here, I have a Jiwicha moving up toward Hotel. I have an opener that's intended to sort of go for Square. I really don't enjoy opening for Triangle from this side. I find it to be a little bit all or nothing, just because if I go in and my opponent does not, then, well, I just lose Bravo Alpha. So we can see the usual Striker special, the KA-52. He's playing USSR, which is exactly what I expected. That's why I have a Tansam short arrow here. And you'll notice this thing has 33-25 meter range against helicopters. It's exactly what we needed. Another thing too, just to be defensive up on this side, I had an AH-1J, came over here and low hovered, just to go over and smack everything in the face with rocket pods should it come up. I'm not sure the positioning was exactly correct. I think it should be a little bit more forward, but trying to get used to that sort of area denial tactic. While on this side, we're using a unit that I have overlooked, I think is fair to say, several times in the past, the M36. For 10 points, this thing seems like a worse M41A1, and yeah, it is. But you don't really get that option as Blue Dragons, so you gotta make do with what you get. Now, we see double BMP3 here, and this is sort of interesting. BMP3's not that common in 1v1 games, and there's a T80UM behind it. So what's actually interesting here, I think this is really good as a zoning tool. We'll take a look at the stats as it comes in, but BMP3s are really expensive, and yet they carry a uniquely potent arsenal against both infantry and vehicles with 2,800 meter ATGMs and decently high AP. We also have VDV-90 Screshets. This is Striker's main push. He's opened toward the Triangle Forest, and that right there tells me, okay, there's very little over on this side, so we're going to keep that in mind. And then I sort of make a bit of a boneheaded decision. I'm going to engage with the Kiyomaro Shiki here into double BMP3. Yeah, I get outranged. I get outranged by 21 AP power, which doesn't seem like a lot given I have 20 frontal armor, but it doesn't need to be a lot for the Kiyomaro Shiki to be put at a disadvantage against that big T80. So, I was basically wrong-footed by this opener from Striker. Now, the other thing that I've noticed about this guy a lot of times before, and the reason that we're on speed 2 right now, is Striker tends to play a very defensive game at first. He's looking for you to make mistakes. He's looking for you to, well, I guess in this case for me, to start giving him points. And I do a little bit. I've lost a couple M36s, I've lost some Yibagun, I haven't really gotten any kills in return for this, right? And I've had, my Kiyomaro Shiki's been damaged. So, so far I get what he's going for. It kind of makes sense. I'm sure he has Spetsnaz screw up here spotting. And the K263 is, it's going to be inside the forest. It's not going to have that great line of sight, and he sees it clearly and backs off with the Ka-29TB. So this is entirely fine, and now we have a little bit of something different here. Yebagun moving up, K200s, just trying to see where he is, trying to identify where that front line needs to be, and I've already bought a howitzer, which is very much unlike me. I guess for most of my ranked games, I don't usually do this buy very early, but my hope here is, okay, if I have an opponent who I know plays defensively, then let me just grind down his front line. Let me get my backline assets going up because I don't anticipate the need to replace a lot of them soon. Big mistake here, not unloading, not catching that. JSDF Rangers died in their transport. Yeah, really big mistake there. But if I have time, let me use it. Let me get tick on him. So we're already 45-0 because he didn't buy a Charlie CV. Let's go ahead and get a CV in Alpha as well. And then my Yebagun are just going to move up, move back, move up, move back. We're going to get mortars out, we're going to get 1, 2 of these howitzers, and we're going to hopefully just take them apart. And yeah, Motostrelki double stack isn't a lot of points here, and it's a lot of investment for me to grind through it, but it also focuses the intention for this whole match, and he's actually bought... Striker usually uses the Akatsiya, which is a 75.6, I believe, maybe 7, HE pseudo howitzer. MiG-27K here, another Striker classic, and I left myself way open for this one. So, remember earlier I said he's looking for misplays? Well, yeah, he found one. So, even though I do get the plane kill between the K263 and the short arrow, this is not worth it at all. So, Yeah, a bit of a lucky crit there. I had already brought a second shoe mount. I was not anticipating this one staying alive forever, which this town is usually very vulnerable, and if you see enemy artillery, it's a prime spot to get hit. So I didn't want that to have free range. So I have a second shoe mount. We do screen him out just a little bit, because what Stryker was hoping for there was kill my super heavy tank, and then push me before I can recover. So that's why his infantry is moving forward, that's why his tank peeked out there, and it only went back because it got its nose bloodied a little bit. It got a crit, can't really see anything, but MP3 is sitting way far back and using their armament quite effectively. But yeah, this is the sort of game that you can really be in for against this guy, which for a lot of people, and I mean, for me as well, it can be very nerve-wracking, because you're sitting there thinking, okay, let's do the math here. There's been 800 and some, well, 850, well, not quite, more or less 800 points of reinforcements from Stryker, and I don't know where any of them went other than one ATGM plane that I've killed. So there could be a lot here. I could be about to get shoved by, 1,200, things like that, points. But we have worn them down on the left, and this is sort of my favorite way to fend that off. We just get kills on infantry in the open ground. The BMP3s have no viable targets, really. And my Chumat are still alive. They're, not supplied because I did lose my cargo, both of them. This is sort of what I said, this position is a little hard to keep. And at this point, I sort of make the decision to myself, okay, we have to be more proactive than this. I need to gather a push. I've got my backline stuff now. I need to actually get moving forward. So we have a K1, I have an AH-1J, we have the Epigun again, the first Motostrelki. I mean, yeah, they're still alive. I didn't really get many kills with them at all, pretty much kills with the howitzers, but I think now's the time to start this push. So I have Kyotoku WAPCs, these guys are really great for anti-infantry work, I have M36s, K1s coming up for heavy support, and keep in mind, Bravo, this is really just not much of an investment at all. It seems like Stryker's willing to give this to me basically for free, probably because the Akatsias in the late game will just pound into the forest here and make holding it very expensive. So, I'm willing to take that. I think giving up the middle zones for free is a bit of a bad decision, even if you're going for this sort of triangle push at the beginning. The second it doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for about 10 minutes here, the second it doesn't work for Stryker, he needs to be in Bravo, at least in the low ground. Because otherwise I can get tick very easily. He's 105 to 0 right now, ticking +1. I haven't even needed to cap Golf in Bravo. But let's say he caps Foxtrot. Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to get a cap on Golf without clearing out Triangle Forest, but I don't need to because neither can he. And instead I can cap up on the high ground, and where can he go in Bravo right now? And by the way, always, in my opinion, have the RPG-26 on. The fact that it was off is why these guys are now just dead. KM900s have an M2 Browning, doesn't sound like much, but at close range, yeah, they'll get a lot done. And it starts firing too late, they're already panicked, and even if he hits one, the other will probably still kill him. So this was a bit of a, it's a detriment to turning all your guns off on your recon. So the response from Stryker is the sort of helicopter gang over here. If you see this, there's always, well, not always, but pretty much always a K-52 behind it, and yep, there it is right there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's just using them defensively. It's not like he's trying to overwhelm my defenses here, but I'm going to buy a second short arrow anyway, because these guys are notoriously hit or miss for situations like this, and I don't particularly feel like being on the miss end of it with this much firepower in the air, so I don't know, just things to think about here. And so far, it's almost like a bit of a SitzKreig, really. I mean, what are we really doing here other than both accumulating and neither one of us wanting to punch? And this is the fundamental problem. This is the fundamental problem with not pushing until and unless your opponent makes a mistake. Eventually you do as well. These BMP3s, caught out in the open, sitting there for long enough, I can hit them with howitzers. They're functionally useless now. And even if they do engage, I'm going to get very easy kills on them, and when they engage, they have low accuracy because of that panic. And in the meantime, my mortars have been helping me kill line infantry with militia, which, that really sucks, right? So the initial bad trading that we got, there hasn't really been that much trading here yet either, but, I mean, it's definitely gone in our way, well, at least after the Kiyumaru died, which still makes me sad. But it also does kind of tell me, so we can see a couple of reinforcements coming over here, the additional Mi-8 MTV, the Spetsnaz GRU walking up this side. I, at this moment right here, still suspect that Stryker wants to win this game by getting into Golf. He has probably defenses on this side, but you don't need to be far into Charlie to make it impactful. I've won games before with the CV parked right there, and lots of smoke to prevent my opponent from getting line of sight, which it's not exactly comfortable, but it doesn't need to be super comfortable, and in the meantime we're just keeping up tempo. If he's going to sit, I'm going to tick. That's it. So 110 to 0, ticking +1, 27 minutes is 450, well, 400 and, oh geez, I can't do math today. Yeah, a little over 400 points, which is more than enough to win. Well, at that point, you're not really going to be winning on points significantly before the end of the game, but I don't really need to either. It's just about denying that +1 to my opponent here. And at this point, in order to get the win, he probably needs to push me out relatively soon. He needs to at least push me out of golf and secure a way to negate this +1 tick, because otherwise I just sit here sort of forever. And we've seen a lot of buys. This is a lot of Yebagun coming out in K200s. I have some Hurauren in Kyotoku WAPCs. I have Sujubuntai in KFV 25s. This is the fundamental of a big push coming in here. And in the meantime, this defense, it's just, the whole intention is to be cost effective. I'm gonna lose the Tukjun Sa here, but hopefully, well, I was really hoping to get one of the K29 TBs, and we do, but it's definitely a bit of a short arrow moment. And then these AH1Js, they're just infantry screening, and the interesting thing here that I want to point out is there was a manpads right there, the Igla N, 2450 meter range, and this is why manpads can be a little bit unreliable. My AH1J, I reasonably expect him to have anti-air in this side, sort of along this line or back along here, and I'm just going to stay away from it. I'm going to come up a little bit this way. I know I have control of square. Other likely places for anti-air are in this section of forest over here, and that gives me a little bit of space right in the middle where I can sort of screen things out. Now, he did still take the town, but we got 2 helicopters out of it and some VDV, and I pretty much just lost a couple of Tukjun Sa. So as far as positional trading, this is good for Striker. As far as points trading, yeah, I'd say that's reasonably okay for me, and we've actually prevented him, although he did capture my CV, reinforcement truck. We've actually prevented him from getting a firm grasp here. He has damaged infantry in this section. He doesn't have an ATGM, he doesn't really have anything more than that, and that's good enough for me for right now. It's not perfect, but we'll work on perfect later. For right now, I'm just trying to get something going on the other side. So we have Yebagun, I have 2 K1s, and I don't think he expected me to be this far forward. It is a little bit aggressive of a position to take, just because fire from this section of the forest can be very, very powerful. But, I mean, this is nice. We're just getting more value. That was about a 30-point double stack. And here's what I said about the BMP3s earlier. My K1 pops up there, 40-point kill, and we get back. And that's fine. This is the cost of having these things on 2 strength. They really probably should have been resupplied by now, just pulled back and resupplied there, but even that has a cost, because you need the resupply jeep, it's not spent elsewhere. And here we see something important too, double BMPT in this section of woods. These Yebagun, these K200s, they're not going to be able to get the kill. In fact, pretty much nothing I have here really is, other than the K1 and the Habyung 90, if the Habyung 90 get the first shot and get a little bit lucky. Double BMP3 is incredibly tough of a nut to crack, but you can see also expecting those Akatsias to fire in, I'm moving up already. So into the double BMPT, I have Yebagun, I have a K1, and I'm prepared to lose a couple of militia, because if they can screen in front of the K1, I might be able to get a bit of a points advantage here, but I kind of mess up a little bit. K1 gets too far ahead, there's a T80A, there's a VDV90. This is where the Yebagun should be to prevent that disaster from happening, because that is exactly the trade that Striker wants, and that I very much do not. So I got a little bit distracted microing over on this end, and yeah, I mean, stuff like that happens, right? But I was also floating a significant number of points, and I decided, you know what? If we're going to play this sort of game in here, if we want this this sort of forward push, I'm just going to call in 3 K1s all at once, and we're going to forest fight, you know? Yeah, sure, why not? We have the tools to do it here. And in the meantime, the KFV 25s are coming in very handy. I still have nothing because I lost that K1 to deal with BMPTs, but even large amounts of okay stuff will, I don't know, it'll get me what I want for right now. The real tragedy was, instead of pushing up with the Yebagun first, I push up with the Habyung 90 and we get rocket potted to death. But this sort of response is actually good for me, and let me explain why. MTLBVs and lots of Motostrelki, they are pretty much just a screening force here, and they can't really deal with the KFV 25s alone if I keep these guys in a smart position. They also are not enough to deal with the K1, and particularly the K1s that are coming in, so long as I have chaff in front of them. So what I need to do is I need to meet his Motostrelki with my Yebegun, and let our fire support trade it out, because I'm reasonably certain, yeah, exactly like this. One shot, nearly dead BMPT. And another thing to notice too is, if you realize that your opponent isn't always healing things up the best, you can take advantage of that. Maybe don't expect him to never heal things up, but certainly notice it and keep that in mind for whether or not you expect those BMPTs and other tools to be at full strength. So VDV90 here, healing up with a traitorous K511, and exactly this. I'm staying way far back beyond his AA range and just pushing up Yebegun to kill VDV90. This is 25 points worth of value, and the H1J has zero problem locking down that kill, and easy as that, we have this position back. I really think this section right here is really hard to hold for either side of the map. It's so easily artilleried, it's so easily pushed with fire support from blue side or from red side. It's incredible. It really is one of those positions, like, as a newer player, I loved holding that town. I was sitting there going, I'm going to put stuff in there, I'm going to get ATGMs in there, I'm going to get manpad teams in there, I'm going to get recon in there, it's going to be great, I'm never going to get pushed out, look, I have all this stuff, and then I get B5'd, or I get, you know, Katsuya to death or something like that, and it's, yeah, well, okay, well, maybe that wasn't the right way to do it. Then I realize everything I put in there gets sort of pounded by something, and all of a sudden I realize, okay, this is a little bit of a trap. So square fours can also be a little bit of a trap depending on your opponent's playstyle. If it just gets bombed out, it's like, oh hey, I put all my stuff here so I can gather a push, and okay, well, oh, yeah, that's dead. So really, I don't know if it works for you guys better than it does for me, but I tend to find that I'm perfectly fine trading over these two sections if need be, and I much prefer to play on this side of the map. So here we have another little bit of an issue. My K1s, because I grouped them when they were getting forward, you'll notice that they're not exactly in a cohesive formation. They're sort of spread out in a line, and that is the opposite of what you want when you're engaging against something like VDV90. What I had in my head was that I get all four of these guys firing at pretty much the same time, and instead I get a really much more delayed firing pattern, and then my advance in, instead of being cohesive, would have been blind. So I notice it right there, I pull back, I'm hoping to get these guys all in one group, and I do not recommend, let me just be clear, I do not recommend ever putting 4K1s together. I don't know, I mean, one cluster bomber is infinite sadness here, but I figured I'd give it a try. I figured it was a big scary answer to the 100-point tanks and the BMPTs that I expected to see. So we have Sochung Su, Hudao Ren, Yebegun, again a little bit too far forward fire support. But you know what? Let's take this fight. Matching infantry and vehicle speed is very tough, especially with Yebegun that are just so slow. So slow, it's incredible. But we do get up here, and the K1s will go to town. Unfortunately, I lose one of the VDV. 3 left, 95-point loss in this push, but we found our targets. That's the T-80A, that's what I want to kill, and I want to just stay away from those VDV-90 as much as I can. So, you know, even in this situation where I'm pushing, where I'm reasonably sitting happy, there's a lot to learn about how to do it differently, how to do it better the next time around. So we found that T-80A. I did not quite get the kill that I wanted, and because he pulls back, he actually has time to reload between shots when he otherwise wouldn't have against something like triple K1. The damage tank is the one on the right side here. We do engage. Because he doesn't shoot at that same tank, we survive, and there's the kill. So that was pretty nice. I needed to immediately withdraw. I didn't. Instead, I lost the K1, and yeah, I think this sort of trading reasonably favored neither of us. But from an overall strategic perspective, an equal fight is one I can afford and he can't. 240 points to 0. So I've got more numbers up here. We're just going to overwhelm some Spetsnaz Guru with K200s, really one of my favorite infantry transports in the game. Like mini Zeldas, basically. You know, M2 Brownings, M60s, 2 guns instead of 3. 2 frontal armor, though, is very nice. And to be quite honest, I probably should have pushed into the town already. But this is where I got that feedback from Lord Pi, and I think from 1 or 2 others who might have been there, by the way, accidental unload. But, and the advice was just, when you're doing this sort of thing, so I'll do my best to represent what I heard from them, and if any of them see this, I hope that they can sort of finesse that explanation. At this point, overwhelming down this road is not the worst idea. So long as you control the square forest here, if you can get chaff in and follow up with something like Habyung 90 or Hudao Ren, then you secure this side of their 2-point, and it becomes really, really hard to push it back. The other thing I'd add, I'm always skeptical of Nani on Cheeky G's, but just look at the work this one's doing. When it finds its appropriate target, this can be such an impactful tank. You have the Mark 19, you have really quick burst fire off the main gun. It's not quite the 10 RPM that it looks like. It's really more of a quick couple shots than a long reload, but it is very fragile, so just be aware of that requirement to take the appropriate fight and no other. Another thing you notice, Stryker is moving his CV around in here. It made me suspect it was infantry, probably in this main block, because usually vehicles you won't see move like that. You'll see a long decap followed by a stop. The sort of jump to jump to jump, that looks like infantry jumping through towns, probably in response to me pushing on this side. So once again I unload, and everything here should have been kept in and then pushed right down this road. We'll see how that goes in just a minute, because that is what I'm intending to do next. But the other thing too is that these 203 SPs have never ever stopped firing, to the best of my micro ability anyway. And that really has just been getting me incremental value, because even now, I mean, all of his infantry there, yeah, we might not exactly be damaging it necessarily, well, all of it per shot, but we are going to be impacting morale. We are going to be definitely having some success there. H1J finally gets a little bit of a bad situation, but, you know, such is life. Now that book M1, it was really his first target. You can see I haven't really played with any planes here, and that might be a little bit confusing given that we've seen an ATGM plane come out already. But I have the short arrows, I had a K-263, and really if he was going to do the Soviet air spam, I can respond in kind. I was trying not to present those sorts of targets. It is definitely a weakness in my play, but this deck in particular takes 3 different air superiority fighters, including the multi-role Block 52D for Seed. So this deck is sort of designed to deal with Soviets as it's being played right now, or even as it's being played with more airplanes than the current match. So that's sort of our situation, and at this point I could have pushed up a little bit and tried to cap using smoke to screen off like I said earlier, but instead we're going to go to just try to end the game, which is always a little bit risky. If you do that big push, you can get counter push, particularly against opponents who like to turtle, but I figured with 15 minutes left, 288 points to my name, that requires a +2 from Stryker in order to win, even if I fail. So, you know, if this push fails and he pushes me back into Bravo, okay, well that's actually a +0. It just negates this one tick. He can cap it, sure, but even then it's a +1. He'd have to also push me out of Gulf and cap it, which isn't going to be the worst thing ever. There's just Chumat, Yebegun, JSDF Rangers, but it's also not nothing, right? And I would have time to respond. I'd have time to get value from his push as well, so it's not really for free. So that's sort of the mathematics that's going on. Well, not mathematics, it's sort of the reasoning that I had going on as this game was reaching its later stages is, you know, what's the risk of a big push right now? And I'd say probably not all that much. I will point out it's a bit of a missed opportunity. There's another BMP-3 just sitting here, and that sort of target, even though it does have some armor, I think is a reasonable target for 10HE artillery. Maybe not only 1, but certainly 2. If you don't kill it outright, you can make it functionally ineffective, as we saw earlier. So let's just get on the way here, as, yeah, 8 reservists are coming up, 4 reservists over on this side. It's a little bit of a chaff spam sort of idea here, which is not everyone's cup of tea, but yeah, I mean, you'll see why I'm doing this too, because the ones over here might seem like a bit of a throw. We have Spetsnaz Gru over on that side, and this Humvee's going down. We have VDV-90 in here. Like, Stryker is very much a defensive player, and I did not expect to take this section of town without bloodshed. But, well, I don't have to, and if you expect that in Wargame, you might be expecting it wrong anyway. Now, another little bit of a slip-up. The Ka-52, I think, was hovering over on this side, and even though I have a ninja, was not really seen, so I am losing a couple things to the Akatsias. Here we go. More Yebegun and K200s. This is purely a distraction. I'm going to get these guys, I'm going to push forward. You can see Stryker's actually microing over here already, so he thinks that this is where I'm going in. And that would kind of make sense from his perspective as well. If you flip it around and you go, okay, what's my opponent going to do? Every time I've pushed him in here, I've paid for it. I've had some success, but it hasn't been free. On the other hand, I know that Stryker has been reinforcing into Charlie, and so it makes sense for Blue, for me, to switch over to Foxtrot. But that's not what I'm doing at all. This is strictly a, hey, look over here, and here we go. Habyoung 90 moving forward, trying to get some vehicle kills, also tying down a lot of his infantry. Yeah, I think this is actually probably okay. We've mostly killed some VDV-90, we've killed their transports, and he was using expensive transports for the VDV earlier on, Skretchets, things like that, 15 points a pop. Not the best trade for Habyoung 90, but they're only 30 points, which is one of the nice things about them. 15 strength with the Panzerfaust 3. It's actually one of my favorite 15 strength squads in the entire game. I only wish I liked the deck that came in a little bit better. Timing here is a little bit off as well. K200 should have been a bit closer together, and the fast Hurauden and Kyotoku WAPCs should have been faster behind them as well. But here we go. Engaging with the Gorno, starting to get the smoke screen up here. I don't want his fire support on that side moving forward, and he's actually gathered a counter push as well, because even if he likes to defend, with 12 minutes left, he needs to push me, and he knows it. He is a Colonel, he's a good player. So right as we're going in, here he comes. Triple T80A is pretty scary. 100 points each, very functional, very capable tanks, and I don't really have that much to defend on the side of Bravo, but I mean, just look at this, man. This is just, oh, K200s, KM900s, lots of Yebigun. We get into the town here, and this right now is when these Kyotokus should be going up into the town as well. I'm a little slow on the uptake, and just doing this push makes him bring back those T80As, because he doesn't know right now, like, am I going to have heavy tanks behind here? Is this a nice opportunity? Like, these sorts of pushes are where people make mistakes, and those mistakes can be little or they can be damned expensive. And then after a bit of evaluation, here he goes, he's looking for Bravo, and this sort of makes sense too. If he can cut through Bravo, all of this becomes isolated, and that's his way back into the game. So Block 52D, going in, looking for Radar AA, also looking to ping that Yak, which I didn't quite, but that's screening out for the Peace Pheasant 2, first plane buys of the entire game, 1-2 T80A's dead. And, I mean, 2/3 of his firepower. I love the Peace Pheasant 2. 90 point buy, 200 point return, and we found the Komanoa Odelinea, which are over here in Charlie, right in that section of town. I have Habyung 90 killing, well, I mean, they were trying to kill the BMPTs. Man, these guys have good fire. Jeez. Holy cow. But I mean, every time he even moves those command infantry, that's going to be a +3, and I think we did just kill them right there. Well, on this side, H1J is fending this stuff off, Ninja fending some of the stuff off. Yeah, the K52 got the kill in the end, but the K52 alone isn't the threat. It's when this guy has support. And right now that K52 is alone and damaged, and we have, I mean, I have another Ninja. If he comes up here, we're going to screen him off and take care of it. But that's going to be a surrender from SitzKreig. Let's go ahead and look at some of the units that did the best. 2,300 kills, 1,780 losses, quite happy with that game. I'm still not sold on Blue Dragons. I think I need to really learn the deck a little bit better. But that comes with time, it comes with practice, things like that. So, Chumat, not really amazing, not really bad. I mean, it's always a good buy, I think, in this deck. And the particular note, I want to point out, look, this is the first howitzer, the 203 SP. We got VDV-90, Igla N, Tunguska M, very much paid for itself, and even without, I mean, this is just the kills. This doesn't count units that it damaged and other units killed, or units that it damaged and had to be withdrawn and healed up. And the K1s did some really great work as well here. Yeah, so that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed. We should have a couple of community casts here, including a couple against SitzKreig as well. He's been online a lot lately, and I think he has a really interesting style of play. It's fundamentally unlike how I learned to play this game in 1v1s, and because of that, it's always a pleasure to play against and to see how other people deal with, as well as when he has success. It's a nice thing to learn from. So that's what we've got for you guys today. Thank you all for hanging around, and we'll see you again real soon.